Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Fuel Stop Chats. I'm James,
Chris.
and welcome to another night. So, tonight we're going to be talking about uh, my favorite time of the year, fall, and some of the color changes. Now, I live down in Florida, but I grew up in Illinois. My wife grew up in Michigan. We're used to seeing the colors change. And when you live in Florida, you get to see green or dark green, depending on what time of year it is and how wet it could be. And it's still going to be hot and muggy. So once a year, my wife and I try to do some kind of pilgrimage to another place where we can actually see some colors changing. And we've been able to go out and do some great stuff, either just flying out and renting a car or taking a motorcycle. But we'd like to talk about leaf peeping, if you will. You know, Chris and I have done a number of trips going up and seeing some different fall foliage. We just enjoy riding in the fall. Well, we just don't enjoy riding, but riding in the fall is one of my favorite times of year just because it's nice, crisp, it's cool in the morning. You know, you got perfect riding weather during the day. The only thing that you have to worry about is the leaves if they're all wet and on the road, because that can be a bit of a hazard. But before we get this kicked off, Chris, I want to talk to you about ride history. I believe you've been sort of busy with that, and I'm curious, how have the tours been and the trips been over at Gettysburg? I know that you had the crew coming in for 9/11. You went and did some stuff. I'll just let you talk because I'm curious how they all went.
Yeah, the Tour of Honor group had their ride to meet in Gettysburg this year, and they kicked it off with a behind the scenes tour of the Flight 93 Memorial up in Shanksville, and so they were riding, California, Wyoming, Montana. The Brooks brothers were coming from Idaho, and they had scheduled to meet there at the Flight 93 Memorial that morning. Some folks that were on this side of the U.S. I met for a coffee in the morning, and then we rode up together. They followed me up 30 to Shanksville, and when we got there, we were met by Ken and Marcy Nacky, and Ken's brother was one of the people on Flight 93.
Hmm.
And so when you go to the Flight 93 Memorial, normally you walk out an observation deck and you're looking at probably, gosh, I don't know, it's probably 500 yards away, a large 20-ton stone that kind of marks the impact area. With Ken and Marcy, we took a little side road that, is usually gated and closed off. We had a private turnaround parking spot for all the bikes. He had a key to a gate and took us right out there to that stone and kind
Wow.
of told us the story. And he became a commissioner of the park and its memorial design. And he told us about the artist and kind of what their vision was, why the pathway, for example, is the branches, and why. And it's to mirror a hemlock tree and the way a hemlock tree grows, because where the plane went in was a hemlock grove of trees.
Hmm.
And just phenomenal people that were incredibly gracious and so giving. And then we rode back. We stopped at the Joan Benet, which is the oldest inn and tavern in Pennsylvania, for lunch. And then we made it back to Gettysburg. On the 9th and on the 10th, I had tours at 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock, and then on both days, Thursday and Friday. And man, it was a good time. I tried to keep it to 10 bikes per time. So 10 o'clock, 10 bikes, 2 o'clock, 10 bikes next day. And then on Saturday, they had an awards dinner, who rode the furthest. And then they went through who had the most memorials by state, and then who had the most total. So it was pretty cool to sit and listen to that. And then that kind of concluded the 4 days that I was involved. But man, the tours of Gettysburg, I tell you what, it's hard to do Gettysburg in 2 hours. I think everybody got there and they were like, I had no idea it was this big.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's 5 square miles. I mean, it's, and so the scope and size, scale and scope of things was one of the biggest surprises that most people had. And then trying to explain, how the day unfolded on day one, how the afternoon went, how day two happened, day three, but I had a pretty efficient route that I had carved out with 6 stops, and we got through it, most of them in 2.5 hours. One group was like, "What do you got going on after this?" And I'm like, "Nothing really till dinner." And so they had a picture day down by one of the old covered bridges, and that's the schedule was 4:30 to be there for the picture. And they said we were on Confederate Avenue coming around kind of the second half of the tour, and they were like, "Hey, why don't we run down there? We'll take the picture with the group, and then when that's over, we'll just pick the tour back up, and we could
Huh.
run right up until 6 when so they were very inquisitive. They were asking lots of good questions, and it was a lot of fun. But yeah, to do that tour in 2 hours, really, and I told everybody this, my job in 2 hours is to get you oriented with the battlefield, give you an understanding of what the far left, far right flank was day one, how that shifted on day two, kind of what happened on day three. And then if you came back, you could wander around and know where you were on
Yeah.
the battlefield, instead of like people said, yeah, I've been riding around here all day yesterday looking at all these monuments, had no idea the context of what I was looking at. And so,
Yeah.
it was cool.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing. There's places that I'll go to and monuments that we'll see, and just places that we tour, and you see a stone and it's got some writing on it, and it's interesting, but to really pull it into full context of all the other monuments around you and how they all played out together, that it's definitely something that I know I want to get up there and spend a day with you out there just so I get a better understanding of it, because you know watching the movie Gettysburg is one thing, but actually walking around with somebody that knows what they're talking about, something else. So that's awesome. I'm glad that it all worked out for you, and that you had a good time. Those guys seem to be pretty on the ball with Tour of Honor. It was great having those guys on with us early on when we first started this podcast, and looking forward to having them on again next year, especially with next year's routes. So, well, let's get into the fall colors.
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
curious. I mean, what's your favorite?
Well, I'm lucky where I live in
Yeah.
Pennsylvania. We have, and I tell people this all the time. It's like I've ridden Western Mass and the Berkshires, and they're pretty, no doubt. But I've flown in to multiple states in the fall, and when you fly into Pennsylvania, uh, it's like somebody spilled a bowl of Fruit Loops out. I mean, the colors are incredible. The national forests here, we have the largest rural population of any state. Most people don't realize that.
Really?
There are larger states, but there are few that have as many rural people, living as we do. I mean, we got Pittsburgh and Philly, and really that's it. Everything else is kind of a small burg or borough. And so Route 6 across the top of our state is absolutely gorgeous in the fall. There's another ride that everybody knows as the PA Grand Canyon. And it literally rides through a massive canyon, but it's just forest everywhere. So, you've got some beautiful, beautiful colors, and you can ride that north to 6, take 6 across the top of the state, and then make your way back down, however wherever you, depending on where you live. But 6 across the top of the state of Pennsylvania, that's really pretty. I grew up in Missouri, and southern Missouri, there's a ton of great rides. You and I took one.
Hmm.
It wasn't the fall, but you can imagine the forestation that
Yeah.
that we rode through, what that must look like in the fall, down around Black, Missouri, and Tom Sauk Dam, and that area. And then there's Herman, Missouri, where the wineries are, and there's a great road that runs all the way down the state, that's really pretty. And then on the Illinois side, you've got 3, the Great River Road that runs north along the river, that's really pretty in the
Mhm.
fall. Those are some of them that are really quick. And like I said, you can't knock New York, upstate, and Western Mass, New Hampshire, Vermont. You and I were up in Vermont, Connecticut, and Maine, in that one fall. And that picture we took over that bridge, looking down that creek with all those colors, is still one of the prettiest fall color, photos that I've taken.
Yeah, I
And
believe that was right outside of Woodstock, Vermont.
yeah, yeah. And I forget the name of it. I don't even attempt to try and say the Indian word for that river, but if
Yeah,
you see it, you'll go, oh yeah, that's the one he was talking about.
yeah, and
Um,
we'll throw some pictures up on the YouTube channel so you can see these, and I'll
some
put
routes,
the
yeah.
some of the routes and whatnot. I mean, I actually have some of the things, and I'm going to share them out. I know, like, you were talking about the wineries. I think one of my favorite routes that, and I drove this, I didn't ride this during the fall color change, just because it was me, my wife, my daughter, but we had all flown out to San Francisco. And let me see if I can figure out how to share on here. But give me 1 second. Yeah, we'll just go with Safari. All right, so if you can see this,
Oh yeah, Michigan tonal trees.
yeah, we'll get into that one here in a second. So there's the main foliage. I believe this is it, maybe. Nope. All right, this route right here. So out of San Francisco, go across the bridge, go through the redwood area right there. You take one up along the coast, and what my goal was to just sort of crisscross back and forth between Sonoma and Napa.
Mm-hmm.
And this route right here is going up over to Kellogg, down to St. Helena, and then you're back up over the mountains, and then you run 12 into Kenwood. This loop right here, it's called the Enchanted Hills, was absolutely gorgeous because you're up in elevation. You can see the striations of the mountain, or the hills, mountains right here. But when you're up here and you're looking down into Napa Valley down below you, you have all the different wineries, and all the different wineries are different, growing all the different uh, varieties of grapes down there. It's like a quilted patchwork of color, because each vineyard has its own color, and they're all in their, they're boxed off, with how they're growing them. It's just gorgeous. It's almost like it's pixelated, the mountainsides.
Mm.
So it's always been one of my favorites. I love going through the tunnel of trees, or any of the actual, what you would think of as fall foliage and trees. But if you get a chance to ride through a nice winery when the colors are changing, I think you'd be really impressed by all the different colors that are on the ground. If you can get up high enough to look down on them, it's absolutely breathtaking. But and the other thing that you really want to note is, when you're looking at doing something like this, do a little research and find out when the colors are going to change. It's usually around the same time. You can look at last year's numbers as far as what the dates were, or the year before that, and sort of guess what your vacation time would be to get there and see the colors changing. But if you can see actual live data up to date, and a lot of the states that have a lot of tourism that come from fall foliage will do that. So your Vermont's,
Yep.
Maine, New Hampshire, they'll have their countdowns and their daily updates of what the colors are doing in what region. So as you're going up and down the state, south to north, north to south, you got to remember that you're going to be changing temperatures going from those areas. So the temperature changing is going to change the colors in those leaves. So you might be at the bottom of the state and not have any color changes, and the color changes could actually be done with at the top of the state, depending on where you are and how different the weather is at the time. Let's see here. So
Yeah, it's interesting too. You were talking about looking online and stuff at the fall foliage and when the colors change. Um, I think a lot of people get this misconception where obviously Maine and Mass is north of me, so they change a little before me, and so on as you go north to south. But
Mhm.
when you get out west and you get in the mountains, you have the elevation introduces an entirely different schedule.
Yes.
So that's something to think about. I shot you that Vermont picture we took of the looking up the creek with the colors. Um, Another place that I found him, kind of impressive too is we talk about the back of the dragon, Route 16 from Marion to Tazewell, and then Route 33, Harrisonburg through the Washington National Forest over to Seneca Rocks. I do those trips. I literally every year in the fall, I'll run down there for like an overnight or a day trip, because that's another really pretty area when the foliage is changing. I've got two fire maples here in the yard, and that's kind of my barometer. I watch those, and when they start to change, yeah, there you go. There's an
Yeah.
example of kind of what we saw when we were riding up through Vermont,
Just gorgeous.
and
Absolutely gorgeous.
that's an untouched. I mean, that's how it looked. I mean, well, you were standing right next to me, so you know how it looked. But
Yeah.
um, that's one of those that you look at and you go, wow, did they enhance that photo? No, that's how it looked. It was a beautiful ride.
Seeing people
Um,
walking down there.
yeah, yeah, they were fishing. But the other thing I can say too is people like I know out west, you have a lot of these large evergreens,
Mhm.
and it's kind of a bummer because they don't really have the same
No.
color. And so yes, they're beautiful forests, and yes, I love the smell of that pine, fir, and the other cedar and the other western cedar, but yeah, you're not going to get those beautiful colors like you do here with the forests. um and I was trying to think too, we were talking about earlier with the in the morning when the dew's heavy and there's a little frost and it thaws, that point in time is a great time to go have a cup of coffee and have breakfast,
Yeah.
because that's when those leaves are just slimy, slick, and dangerous. You wait about an hour and the road dries off and you get those cool pictures of the bike in front of you going through the leaves, and they're just curling out around the bike as you're riding along. It looks like a jet, with the turbulence you can see with the
Yeah.
leaves curling out around. Just absolutely. And you're right. There's nothing like a good crisp fall morning to take a bike ride, man. There's
No,
there's something
there's not.
something special.
Yeah, you can stop, have yourself a hot coffee or a hot chocolate, and you get on the ride, and it's just so invigorating to get that cool air in the helmet like that. To me, it pumps me full of life for the year. That's I have no other way to explain it.
Yeah,
You were talking about the leaves circling out behind the bike. We got some good footage. We were running GoPros on our bikes when we did the Natchez Trace trail.
I was just gonna say that.
And now that's a difficult one. It's beautiful. The colors up in the Nashville area can be absolutely gorgeous because you have some actual good elevation with the rolling mountains, the rolling hills there. It flattens out for a bit, but you will get some more color down near the south. The problem is that it's so long because it just runs straight north to south through three different states that it could start changing color in Nashville late
Be dead
September,
green when you
early
get down
October.
to, yeah,
Yeah, and
Mississippi.
yeah, or it'll be dead at that point in November, but the colors will be changing down in Mississippi. So the good thing is that you have a very large window of time to ride
Yeah.
that and see some color changing, but you won't see the color changing the entire route.
Yeah, it's a good point. We had beautiful color, like you said, when we left the Nashville area. And I don't know, we were probably down around, I want to say, well, not quite Jackson, but you know, pretty far down there before we really lost it. Um, and the
Mhm.
National Park Service, I mean, it's, if you look at the Natchez Trace on a map, you see the road and you just see the green, on both sides, and then it's whatever the state is, but you feel like it's almost like you're displaced. It's like, I'm not in Alabama.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm not in Mississippi. I'm not, you know, because of the hardwoods and stuff that they planted along there. And it really does isolate you from, the billboards and the towns and whatever.
Yeah,
Um,
everything. It's so beautiful. That just for that reason alone, it reminds me a lot of riding in Germany because they don't put billboards or signs or posters or anything on the road because to them it's a distraction and it should be.
Other
I
than the speed limit.
Yeah, well, yeah, you sort of got to keep your mind on the road. I wish we had some laws in this state or this country that did the same thing. One of the big thing that gets me is the big LED bright billboards nowadays. They're just so bright it
Um,
throws my
we
night
have
vision
one.
off. So
Insurance company up here put one up, and it's offensive. I mean, literally offensive.
yeah,
You get this beautiful night sky, and then you get this boom, and it's like, for what? Like, why do you think I care at 10 o'clock at night to see I don't. Yeah, and
no,
and it's
especially where you live. My buddy Javier lives there in Waynesboro as well, and sitting on his back porch, you're up high enough, just sitting there watching for satellites to go across the sky. It's just it's aggravating when you have the light pollution like that.
yeah. The
That-
uh the other good favorite ride of mine is 522 here in PA. It's a filled with nasty switchbacks, great elevation changes, and that is the beauty. You get those elevation changes where you get those massive vistas of all that fall foliage. Route 30, Route 16, they both go up over the mountain and offer up these phenomenal views of these big vistas across these valleys that it's not polluted with houses, and it's just absolutely gorgeous. The I was trying to think too of where we were. You were talking about the vineyards. You know what I like is in the springtime, the vineyards when they start to blossom.
oh, it's
Um,
the smell, the scent of that,
yeah,
something you
it's
don't get in a car.
no, it's absolutely amazing. But you were
That's the
talking
only
about that.
thing I like about Florida is when the your orange groves are blossoming and you have the orange grove blossom smell in your helmet. Uh,
Yeah,
it's
that's
great
the
weather. It's
2 weeks of tolerable Florida.
that's it. Yeah, pretty much.
Then it's over. But you had the Michigan tunnel of trees up. That is a phenomenal ride in the fall.
Yeah,
And I'll tell you something
M119.
else. Yeah. The other great secret too is that southeastern corner of Ohio. I went over there in the fall and was doing some of the Indian mounds, riding around,
Mhm.
checking those out. And Ohio, West Virginia, that whole area there, man, I mean, just stunning when the trees change.
Now, how far away are you from the Parkway,
The Blue Ridge
the
Parkway,
Blue
well, up
Ridge?
here
Yeah.
it's Skyline Drive, and that's only Skyline Drive. I can get to the northern terminus of the Skyline Drive in probably hour and a half, um, and then ride that all the way down. It actually becomes the Blue Ridge Parkway
Mhm.
then, but and that's a real pretty ride in the fall. You get that Shenandoah Valley, uh, Route 9 across Virginia into to West Virginia. Um, that offers some pretty good vistas too, where you get up over these, you get that Shenandoah River Valley, and you just it's just walls of these colors of trees, and some of those peaks. Um, and then what's the other one? 220 in West Virginia. Don't know where the road goes or why it's there, but it's the most amazingly paved and upkept road. And
Really?
yeah, and it's like, I mean, I don't want to say it's a raceway or anything because who's listening? I don't know, but man, I'm telling you what, that you can cruise on that thing. I mean, just get it. And it's very seldom traveled, and it just ends. It ends into this little 2-lane, state road through this little town, and you're like, what was that all about? but there's a couple of spots in there where you get those big vistas as well. And you're just looking out over these massive valleys of hardwoods that are changing colors, in the fall. It's just, stunning.
Now, do you have a lot of aspen up there?
We don't have a lot of aspen. We have, the sycamores that you saw there, like Vermont with the white bark,
Mhm.
birch, some of those, birch trees, aspens. And I've not seen it in the fall, so I don't know, but I know Route 12
Mhm.
in where I'm going with Bryce to Torrey. Uh, that would be interesting to see that in the fall, because man,
I've
what
seen
an
pictures. I
amazing,
haven't ridden it. I've only ridden it the one time, and that was in the middle of summer. And
yeah.
hands down, one of my favorite routes. But that Aspen Grove is something that I constantly go back to in my mind. I've got a great picture of my wife sitting on a rock looking out over this huge just chasm, and
Yeah.
all of the aspens are way off to the right, because I did a big panoramic view picture of it. It's one of my favorite pictures, but I could just imagine those colors, because one of my favorite trees and color changing is an aspen, just with the white bark and all of that. It's those little leaves.
Yeah, I love them in the spring, when you get that little breeze and they get that green silver shimmer. Those
There's
big
a
aspen
certain
forests.
noise to them too. My wife was telling me about,
You're
yeah,
right.
we were actually talking to somebody and he told us all about it, and I completely forgot about it. We were listening to something. My wife's like, that's that aspen tree noise. And there's a name for it. She's probably listening to this now and
Rose
yelling
probably
it.
going, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
She's
exactly.
yelling.
So, but yeah, there is a name to it, but it's a very peculiar sound, but it's very pleasing as well. If you can get there and it's quiet and it's just the sound of those leaves rustling, I can just imagine what the colors, what it would be like.
I don't know what that word is. That's here we go.
There
The
you go.
Onondaga people are said to have called quaking aspen nutkie, meaning noisy leaf.
Yep. Quaking aspen.
Quaking aspen. Yeah. There you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah,
Look
you
at
can
that.
actually do a search and they got a recording of it somewhere, I'm sure. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, there's, I mean, some gorgeous roads out there. We're not going to do a really long podcast on this. I think that we've sort of talked about it. Like I said, know before you go. Find out
Yeah.
where they're, when the dates are, and plan ahead, because you're not the only person that's going to want to go out there and leaf peep. Weekends are going to be very busy. There's going to be a lot of cars. There's going to be a lot of traffic. There's going to be a lot of RVs. Plan accordingly. I know that when Chris and I did the Green Mountain and the White Mountain up and through Vermont and Maine, which, oh, by the way, is absolutely gorgeous. Anything up in the Northeast, it really is. You go from New York and north, it's you can't take anything away from it. The problem is that you're going to share it with a million of your friends, because it's going to be a lot of people out there.
A
It's
good a good little known traveled, I mean, it's traveled quite a lot, but it's not traveled for leaf peeping as much. But if you ride 15 north from my house going up to New York, like you're going up to Corning and up in that area, there's a stretch. Tammy and I talked about this because we were just up there a few weeks ago. There's a stretch. I know it's 40, 50 miles where there's no homes, there's no billboards, there's no nothing. It's just the interstate winding through the mountains, and the forests are thick. And so I told her, I said, we need to go up there, work our way back down to 6, and then take 6 across the top, and then come back down, through the state to home. And but you just reminded me of something. You were talking about know before you go. I can tell you when the leaves are changing, and if you really want to know, try to book a hotel, pick a Marriott Courtyard in October the 2nd or 3rd of this year, October 2nd, October 3rd, and try to find something that's in the Berkshires, and watch the price go from 2 something a night to 450, 460 a night.
Yep.
Um, then you'll know that must be leaf peeping week. Uh,
Exactly.
that's their peak time. But good tip, you can go to most of the dots, PA dot, right? You can go to MoDOT in Missouri. You can go and you can get these live camera views, and you can see the color changes. But I would say, depending on where you're at, like Maine coming south, that last week of September, all the way coming south, right? September, then October, and then, latter part of October, first part of November, um, and kind of work your way south from the Northeast up there. That's kind of what we do is we'll go up to Maine and kind of work our way down over the weeks and catch peak season, all the different places. You will be amazed how crowded the roads are, how expensive the hotels are, and if it's June and you want to book a hotel and you click to October and you're in one of those hot areas, you'll see what I'm talking about. The prices
Yep.
are they're proud of the leaves. That's what I love about Pennsylvania so much, man. I get just as beautiful a view of fall foliage. We have massive forests here that they're close and easy to get to. My favorite tree, you were talking about aspens for you. For me, it's those maple trees, man. I
Yeah,
have
those
two
are,
what they call fire maples, not the sugar maple, but the fire maples. They
yeah, that
get
red one in your yard. Yeah.
that red and orange and yellow. Man, I tell you what, that's my favorite fall tree.
Yeah. So if you're looking to camp, camping is usually a better, easier way. But you could be dealing with colder weather. So pack accordingly. Make sure that you're bringing something warm for the nighttime, aside from bourbon and firewood, because once the fire goes out and the bourbon dies away, you're going to be freezing in that tent. You don't have a sleeping bag.
I
But
tell you what, buddy of mine turned me on to this like half of the length of a heated blanket that is pretty magical when you don't have good
yeah,
insulated when you
that
don't
was last
bring
year.
the winter. You bring that camping sleeping bag that's like this big around, and it's about the thickness of two sheets, and it says it's good down to 40 degrees. They're not joking, man. You get below 40, it's miserable.
Yeah. So the story on this is Chris, Ty, and myself met up last year in North Carolina. It was October or November.
It was the latter part of October, right?
Yeah. But it was beautiful weather leading up to that date. And then when we got there, they said the weather was going to drop, into almost single digits at night, if I remember correctly, for like 2 nights.
Yeah, it was
And
26. We didn't get to single digits, but we did have 26 one night, 28 one night. I do know
yeah,
that.
yeah, cold. It was cold enough. We'll just
It
put
was
it like
cold.
that.
I mean, we
Um,
waited that one morning to go get breakfast because we were waiting on the ice on the roads.
yep,
Remember?
exactly.
Yeah.
But Ty shows up with a freaking electric blanket, and I have to say that I was sort of jealous. Ty rolled in with what his wife Kim had packed for him because she is smart and we are not. But I found myself at the CVS and I bought an extra long extended heating pad. I'll tell you what, a heating pad inside of a blanket, you can put it on your belly, you can put it on your back. For me, I wrap that some bitch down by my feet and the heat just moves all the way up to the escape hole. Oh, it's a lifesaver. It totally changed my entire vacation because I was sleeping so comfortably at night.
Yeah.
Now, when Chris came down in North Carolina to meet up with me and we were building a shed, I had a heater in my tent. It's a little spot heater, and I had the heating pad. Now it got down into the 20s one night, and I offered it to Chris. So I made him a believer in one night. Heat, and it doesn't take up any room.
No, it's small. And the trick was once I got it situated in a sleeping bag, because like I said, it was 80 degrees during the day.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
had no idea it was going to get that cold at night. I know that in the desert, I know that in the mountains, but I didn't expect that down there.
No.
And we were down to low. We were along the creek, so I mean, it's going to be a little cooler, but for an oversized heating pad, uh, man, I tell you
Yeah.
what, it
$8 at
was
CVS.
everything you need. It was all it was, and it got the inside of that whole pocket warm, and you were super comfortable. So yeah, CVS, big oversized heating pad.
Yeah. Not only that, it was nice to have. It's nice to have on a really long riding day when you get in your tent. You put that sucker on your back, go to sleep.
Yeah.
It really loosens up your back for the next day if you're doing multiple days. I know you 20 and 30-year-olds out there don't understand what we're talking about, but for us 50 and 60-year-olds, a heating pad is magic.
Yeah, I was surprised too how small it folded up. So definitely worth sticking in the go bag.
Yes, that it stays in mine. So, well, I guess that's really about it, Chris.
Hey
did
man,
have,
you know what? It's one of those deals. It's a fuel stop chat. We could sit here for another cigar and talk about I'm sure there's a million fall rides. And by the way,
still have this sitting here from the ride.
Tullamore Dew.
All this.
There you go. If you're listening and you have questions, you can send me a note at chris@ridehistory.com and let us know what topics you're interested in, or hey, if you've got a great fall ride, you heard this podcast, shoot us a note and let us know, and we'll bring it up on the next conversation. And we really appreciate everybody. I got to give you real quick before we close. Bruce Gary, I met him face to face. He's a listener, and we were sitting next to each other on the bikes, and he kept looking over and he goes, I know where I know you from now. He goes, I've been watching your podcast. And I was like, what? And he said, yeah, he's gotten into the podcast. He actually likes the YouTube better. But he kept telling me it's Bruce Gary, not Gary. My name's not Gary. It's Bruce Gary. And he said that so many times, I thought, man, he must think I'm either deaf or 105. But just a great guy, part of the Tour of Honor group and listener. So Bruce, thank you so much for listening, and appreciate you meeting you there at the Tour of Honor. That was great.
I told you I was going to make you famous a long time ago when we tried to throw that Harley Davidson off the side of the road, record it and put it on YouTube. I made you YouTube famous. That's all I know.
Dude, I'm telling you right now, if it happens again, I'm putting a ski mask on, I'm launching the bike, and we're just gonna pay the $500 between the two of us and watch that thing bounce down the Salt River Canyon. So I should have done it.
You should have.
Should have done it.
You would have had a story, bro.
Well, that, and then the realization of riding on the back of your bike till we got to civilization was a deterrent. It was almost
hold
like,
on tight, baby. Hold on tight.
I know. It just kind of crossed real quickly. I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. It was good catching up with you, brother.
You too. All right, Chris. Thanks for everybody for listening. Like and subscribe. It only helps us out with getting more people to listen to us. I think that we sometimes have a good story when Chris is telling it. But like, subscribe, reach out to Chris at chrisridehistory.com, or reach out to the show fuelstopchats@gmail.com. Either way, but let us know what you're thinking.
From you.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
All
Chris,
right.
Rider out.
Rider out.
Learning history is something taught in school. Experiencing history is a right seldom exercised. Either experiencing the American Civil War by walking its battlefields and touching the soil where blood was shed, or experiencing musical history from the studios where the lyrical touchstone was created and recorded, the textile of history should be experienced firsthand. Participants in this journey should be riding a motorcycle from historical location to historical location so that the environment can wash through them in the open air. Ride History provides an intimate, educated, and personal experience guiding its riders through history on the freedom of two wheels. Check out www.ridehistory.com for available tours of the Gettysburg Battlefield or ride through America's entry into the Industrial Revolution on the Oilfield Tour. The Knox Tour from Fort Ticonderoga to Boston, or the 8-day Rhythm Tour, starting in Atlanta and hitting Nashville, Memphis, Muscle Shoals, Jackson, and New Orleans. Ride through American history at ridehistory.com.